The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the National Bank of Georgia decided to keep the refinancing rate unchanged. The monetary policy rate is 10.5%. According to the current forecast, other things being equal, inflation will start to decline gradually from spring of this year and will approach the target by the end of the year. Tighter monetary policy, along with the fading out of the one-off factors and fiscal consolidation, will contribute to this reduction in inflation. State Inspector's Service was one of the conditions for visa liberalization between the EU and Georgia, EU Ambassador Karl Hartzell said, and the EU has invested quite a lot in terms of expertise and capacity building in this institution. According to the ambassador, he had already expressed some serious concerns regarding the abolishment of the State Inspector's Service several times previously. Karl Hartzell evaluated the process as too rushed and not inclusive enough. 42% of employees over the age of 40 left the state pension system, Georgi Danelia, CEO of the pension agency, said. The system was launched in 2019 and including 300,000 employees over the age of 40, of which almost half of the beneficiaries left. At the moment, the assets of the pension fund amount to 2 billion lari, and it includes 1,176,000 members. Due to the rapid spread of Omicron and the weak course of the virus, the obligation of a green passport is abolished in Georgia. The relevant decision was adopted by the Coordination Council this week. The sitting, chaired by Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili, was held in the format of a video conference as Irakli Garibashvili tested positive for coronavirus. According to the Coordination Council, those who need a green passport to travel abroad will still be able to use this mechanism. This is the Checkpoints, authored and presented to you by Elena Gvanjilashvili. One of our government's key goals and priorities is to shape Georgia into a regional hub, tapping into our location and potential. Consequently, our government since inception has been fully supportive of this project, and we now reaffirm this support to PACE and each of its employees, Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili stated at the opening ceremony of a new seaport in Poti. The Prime Minister, in the company of Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development Natia Turnava, U.S. Ambassador Kelly Degnan, and PACE Group's President Josep Dolidze visited the new seaport built through the joint effort of PACE Group and the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation (DFC). 93 million USD has been invested into the seaport's construction, with large hydrotechnical facilities built and modern port infrastructure installed. The Prime Minister, in his speech, pointed out that PACE carried out the large-scope construction of Poti's new port, a far-reaching project for the region starting in 2020. According to him, hundreds of jobs were created in the process, a crucially important aspect for the region's population amid the pandemic. The value of the new seaport, one of the largest among Georgia's ongoing maritime projects, is almost 120 million USD. The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation allocated 50 million USD to finance the project, the organization's largest single investment for a project in the whole region. After the project's finalization, the capacity of Georgia's unified seaport infrastructure will increase by 3.5 tons. Together with the Prime Minister of Georgia, the U.S. Ambassador, and the President of PACE Group, the participants of the official opening ceremony were also addressed by President of the America-Georgia Business Council, Mamuka Tsereteli. The guests also familiarized themselves with a video address by Albright Stonebridge Group's Vice Chair James O'Brien, who read a letter from Madeleine Albright, former U.S. Secretary of State and Chair of Albright Stonebridge Group. I'm especially pleased about the strong support of the U.S. government to this project, including the USD 50 million investment of OPIC, Albright said. She claimed that Poti was an important trade center and its expansion would help the city to gain more benefits. The U.S. Ambassador Kelly Degnan mentioned her attendance of the event in a webinar organized by the EPRC.
I was just at the opening of a new port terminal in Poti on Saturday. That was another step forward for Georgia in being able to contribute to these regional networks that I think we all hope we'll see more of in the coming years. But it will be very important for Georgia to build investor confidence, including developing a cohesive port strategy to fulfill its full economic potential on the Black Sea. These are just a few comments with a Georgia perspective. Again, we are seeing real progress in many areas that Georgia has prioritized. There's a lot more work to be done, and I hope that in cooperation and collaboration with its Black Sea neighbors, Georgia is going to be able to fulfill its potential for both economic growth and stability in this region.
The U.S. ambassador elaborated on Anaklia port as well and called it a missed opportunity for Georgia.
After visiting Poti, I went up to Anaklia to take a look at the site there, and it just broke my heart because, of course, this year there are supposed to be ships going in and out of that port. It's supposed to be open for business this year had the project continued as planned, and I think it's a real missed opportunity. We see now as the region is opening up with the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, creating opportunities for the region to work as a region. We see what Georgia could have put on the table with something as significant as Anaklia, I hope someday will be, in addition to Poti and Batumi. Georgia really would have had something significant to contribute. Now Georgia's got plans on paper, and I think if investors are going to come in and see this, as the general said, they need to see that the government is 100% behind this project. A number of people unsolicited at the port terminal opening on Saturday said, you don't wait for the cargo to be coming before you build the port. You build the port and the cargo comes. So I think the different feasibility studies support the idea of having Poti and Anaklia and Batumi serving different needs, but encouraging that kind of view of the Black Sea as more of a commercial hub. The Prime Minister mentioned at the port opening, he was there as well, this concept, this vision of Georgia as an east-west hub, not just for ports, but for other kinds of connectivity, for moving goods from Central Asia through to Europe. But you have to have more than words. You have to have strategic plans. You have to be able to market this to good investors to get the ball rolling. And I would say, unfortunately, because Anaklia got tangled up into political and economic difficulties, Georgia is behind the curve in what it can contribute to regional network opportunities right now.
On behalf of the Checkpoints and BMG English, I posed the question which echoed the hybrid war threats coming from Russia and its malign influence on Georgia. My focus was on the importance of the US-Georgia Free Trade Agreement and its perspectives. Both Lieutenant General retired Ben Hodges and the US Ambassador to Georgia, Kelly Degnan, provided their analysis on the issue on the EPRC's webinar, which focused on the security of the Black Sea region.
For me, this is all about transparency and legal systems and processes that investors trust. That if somebody's going to put money somewhere, they want to know if it goes bad that they're going to get their money back, or that they're not having to pay extra hidden costs that are perhaps illegal. So the making sure that the legal framework supports the idea of being open for business. Right now, the UK is under a lot of pressure as we're all realizing how much real estate is owned by the former ruling family in Kazakhstan, for example. And of course, that's probably just a tip of the iceberg compared to what Russians own there, and people from the Middle East and from China. So UK is having to relook their laws to make sure that there is transparency, because they have a terrible problem with dirty money right now. And I think transparency, a very active media, and an inquisitive parliament are the keys to making sure that you don't have this sort of malign influence in all your financial systems. Ambassador.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. That's one of the reasons that we and others have been working with Georgia on developing a critical infrastructure investor screening mechanism like CFIUS, but something that would be appropriate for Georgia, to make sure that Georgia knows who is investing in its critical infrastructure, who is owning it. And there's layers and layers before you can really sort out who's got a piece of some of the main infrastructure here that is not only potentially vulnerable, but that is then critical to this idea of an East-West hub. And I think getting that in place now, as Georgia's starting to get back to developing in its critical infrastructure, but also receiving a lot of money flowing through, not always from good, clean sources, is very important. Our goal here is to get good investors to invest in Georgia. There's a lot of potential here, but again, as the general said, the first thing investors look at is, is my money going to be safe in here? Is this a good return on my investment? But also, if I have a dispute, is there a legal system that is a level playing field? Am I going to get a timely resolution of a contract dispute if I have it? Is the bidding process somebody got their thumb on the scale so that all the contracts are going to, certain people and not to foreign investors? All of that is critical to us being able to attract good investors here to Georgia. That's one reason why we and others put so much emphasis on developing that at this point. There's been great progress made over 30 years. I think everybody's impressed with how much progress Georgia has made in 30 years with the help of the United States, the European Union, other friends of Georgia. And those same friends are the ones who are saying, look, let's not stop. Please, Georgia, keep moving forward. Get these oversight institutions put in place. Give your parliament the authority to really serve it in an oversight capacity and function as a multi-party parliament that a healthy democracy needs.
As for my focus on the FTA with the United States, the ambassador did not leave out this part of the answer as well.
I think anybody who has been following U.S. developments knows that trade agreements have not been at the top of the agenda for any country recently. I think that there is a great symbolic value in a free trade agreement between the United States and Georgia, more so than probably an economic value. And we continue to raise it. But again, as you see in the United States, trade agreements are not at the top of the agenda right now. So we'll continue to have that as one of our talking points.
Here are some of the businesses that try their best to grab all the opportunities inside and outside the country to keep growing amidst pandemic and beyond. Our reporter Natia Taktakishvili kindly pulled together the weekly news bulletin for Georgia's businesses. Let's take a look at the business activity during the new wave of the pandemic that's sweeping Georgia.
Traditional Georgian clay potteries will be made in Georgia using a 3D printer. Construction of the clay processing plant will start in Emirati from spring, while the potteries will be made in Tbilisi through a 3D printer. David Mizandari, the author of the first ceramic 3D printer in Georgia, plans to attract about $1 million USD to start production and holds active negotiations with potential investors. According to Mizandari, 3D technology allows to produce clay potteries with a capacity of 100 liters in 90 minutes, while production of a one-ton pottery requires 8 hours. This year, Georgian product Renaissance plans to export 10 tons of pecan hazelnuts to Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. As Leon Bolkwadze, one of the founders of the company, explains, pecan hazelnuts are less popular in Georgia, although they have great export potential. According to him, at this stage, gardens of pecan hazelnuts are grown on a land area of 15 hectares in Georgia, and the gardens are located in Abashak, Hobi, Lagotehi, and Quareli. Pecan-like nuts is mainly used in confectionery, and its price on the international market ranges from 7 to 9 USD. Georgian corn oil Karwa appeared in supermarkets with a delay of 1 year. General Director of Karwa, Georgi Tabagari, explains that production of Georgian corn oil was delayed due to the pandemic. He declares that the company has been unable to bring foreign experts who would finish the technical maintenance of the plant. Today, the corn oil factory produces 50 tons of oil per month from raw materials obtained from local farmers and employs 25 people in Hobby. Georgian corn oil is sold in AgroHub, Carrefour, and Goodwill, which price totals to 14 GLR per liter. Karwa plans to increase production in line with the demand growth. The hazelnut processing enterprise Agritrade exported 700 tons of hazelnuts. As Baya Salukwadze, the founder of the company, told BMG 90% of hazelnuts were sold in China and the rest were distributed to European countries. According to her, the company has bought more than 2,000 of nuts and their processing is still underway. The hazelnut processing and storage enterprise is located in Gaheti. Agritrade totally exports products abroad. Barbara Sela plans to build a chateau in Kakheti. The company has already purchased 1 hectare of land in Ujarma and will start growing wines this year. As the director of the company declares, the chateau will include a cellar as well as a tourist accommodation. According to him, the exact amount of the investment is still unknown and at the moment they are in the process of calculation. As the company notes, Barbara's chateau will be available in 2023. Barbara Cellar is operating on the market since 2014. The company combines 8 types of wine at this stage. The annual capacity of Barbara Cellar is 3,000 bottles of wine. Animal and poultry feed producing company Nutrimax will launch a new enterprise in the village of Gamardreba from the fall of this year. As Beka Bekaya, director of Nutrimax, told BMG, the company is investing about 2.5 million euros in the enterprise. According to him, up to 30 people will be employed in the new enterprise. Nutrimax has been producing animal and poultry feed since 2009. The annual production of the enterprise totals to 35,000 tons. 60% of Nutrimax products are sold in Georgia and 40% in Azerbaijan, Armenia, and several African countries. Myanmar Collect is opened at Kutaisi International Airport. The new facility of Myanmar Collect offers customers coffee and tea with a takeaway concept as well as various aromatic cocktails. It should be noted that Myanmar Collect already has 16 objects throughout Georgia. At this stage, Myanmar Collect is available in Tbilisi, Kutaisi, Batumi, and Rustavi. Peel Naturals, manufacturer of personal care products, has added a line of grapeseed cosmetics. As the founder of the company told BMG, the premium segment line includes day and night creams, eye cream, body lotion, canolina oil and balm. According to her, production of serum and sulfate-free shampoo is also considered for the future. It should be noted that Peel Naturals also operates 2 new branches. The first facility will be opened in Rustavi this year and the second in Tel Aviv. At the moment, Peel Naturals produces up to 350 head care products and owns 9 branches in Tbilisi. A new product, Autobabu sauces, has appeared on the market, which combines 2 types of red and green Bulgarian sauces. Homemade sauces are produced by order, which are sold online. As for the price, it ranges from 10 to 20 gelari. Elena Chomachidze, the founder of the startup, told BMG that the production will be expanded soon and a 3rd new taste will be added to the assortment. Autobabu sauces are a new interpretation of old tastes. Consumers like the live flavors we make products by order because I want these sauces to keep the taste and aroma alive. So far, the production is not profitable. First, I want to promote Georgian sauces and flavors. I consider expanding in the future. I want to add new, unique flavors to the production, which will be based on my grandfather's recipes, says the founder of the startup.
In January 2022, the consumer price index increased by 1.1% compared to the previous month, while the annual inflation rate amounted to 13.9%. With regard to the annual core inflation, the prices increased by 5.6%, while the annual core inflation without tobacco also amounted to 5.6%. The following table shows percentage changes in prices for the commodity groups of the consumer basket, as well as the relevant contributions to the overall inflation rate. The annual inflation rate was mainly influenced by price changes for the following groups. Food and non-alcoholic beverages, the prices in the group increased by 16.2%, contributing 5.27 percentage points to the overall annual inflation rate. Within the group, the prices increased for the following subgroups. Vegetables, that was around 23%, bread and cereals, around 21%, oils and fats, around 20%, mineral water, soft drinks, fruit and vegetable juices, around 18%, sugar, jam, honey, chocolate and confectionery, 18%, fish, 17%, milk, cheese and eggs, 14%, fruit and grapes, 14%, meat, around 12%, coffee, tea and cocoa, around 8%. Housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels. The prices for the group posted a almost 45% increase, which contributed around 4 percentage points to the annual inflation rate. The prices were higher for the following subgroups: electricity, gas and other fuels, 68%, water supply and miscellaneous services related to the dwelling, 58%, maintenance and repair of the dwelling, around 9%. In the same period, prices were lower for actual rentals for housing, and that was around 3%. Transport, the prices increased by 16.2%, contributing to 2.08 percentage points to the annual inflation rate. Within the group, the prices increased for operation of personal transport equipment, and that was around 23%. The checkpoint sat down with the interview with the Deputy Governor of the National Bank of Georgia, Vapuna Lejava.
Thanks for the quick response. Always pleasure hosting you in our Forbes studio. And by the way, thanks for sending me as a supervisory strategy for 2020-2022. We'll speak a bit later about this digital lari, digital currency. We've been talking about it a few weeks now, months ago, here in the same studio. Where do we stand so far, and what are the results of some public debates, let me say so, with fintechs and some financial groups in Georgia.
Hello, Georgi. Thank you also for inviting me, and especially thanks for being interested in this topic. One of the purposes of the strategy is to have as far outreach as possible, and of course this platform, this studio is helping us in this. On digital lari, so last year we spent most of the time talking to potential technological partners who have experience in this field. We were trying to understand what are the products already available there in the market, share our intentions, and to see whether what we want is possible, is reachable. We met about 100 companies during this period. These meetings were very helpful, very productive, and made us more optimistic about the technological solutions. It seems like what we need is actually available there, and a lot of the firms are very much willing to partner with us. As you know, there are not many countries who have piloted the digital currency around the world, and being one of the first is also a showcase for potential partners, so they're very much interested. Where we stand currently, so we have finished talking to potential partners. I think we met almost with everyone who the famous names you probably heard of. Currently, we're discussing internally what should be the scale and the format design of the pilot project, which we aim to implement sometime this year.
Okay, and at the same time, our viewers and followers are very much interested how Lari is positioning during last at least even 5 months and more, and I mean strengthening Lari's positions to USD based on all the scenarios. Well, it's not even scenarios, Papuna, it's more actions happening around where political and economic situation is quite vulnerable. So what are the basic points why Lari is doing so good last few months?
Mm-hmm. The primary driver of stability in Lari is the recovery in the economy. So we've seen a pickup in the economy starting since April, May last year. Tourism is also recovering. We are seeing strong remittances flows. We're seeing export increasing. All this is helping Lari. Also, we have tightened monetary policy, as you know, and this is also positive on Lari rate. But in general, I wouldn't focus too much on the short-term movements like the last time Lari last few weeks. Yes, no, I would say in the last couple of weeks,
okay.
Lari has been appreciating. We are not necessarily looking for particular reasons for this. It may be just short-term.
But for the big picture, it shows what you mentioned. I mean, economic recovery and tightening on the policy.
Yes, and the inflows that are coming from tourism remittances.
Okay, well, now we can move to the basic points about the supervisory strategy. It is the first document when a national bank is publishing supervisory strategy, and it includes strategic priorities for 3 years, including 2022. What do you think supervisory strategy? How important is to be published and to have it as it is, and what do you think? Could we do it a bit earlier, and how important was to have such document in previous years?
Mm-hmm. Let me start by the purpose of the supervisory strategy. So we have several purposes by publishing this strategy. First, it's our internal planning document. This is how we help ourselves plan our activities over the medium term period. You know that day by day we have a lot of important challenges, and sometimes our long-term goals, long-term priorities are becoming shadowed with immediate developments, ad hoc developments. This is one of the reasons we need strategy to plan our work in the long term. Second, this is the document for our staff. Our staff should be able to see what purpose they are serving. So in every activity they're implementing at job, they should be able to see the link to our strategic priorities. So on their day-to-day job, they should be able to see what goals of the National Bank of Georgia they're serving. Third, this is a document for financial sector, for them to plan their activities, to know a regulatory environment, and to know what to expect. And finally, this is the document, it's the communication document with experts, with people who are interested in the field, academics, IFIs, media, etc. This is how we communicate with all the stakeholders.
Papuna, while we move to some previous years, you're pointing 5 basic directions within the documents. I'm talking about supervisory priorities. It's strengthening of culture, encouraging leadership and initiatives, also the cooperation with stakeholders, facilitation of stable functioning of the financial sector itself, approximation to international standards, developments of the ecosystem for sustainable financial technologies. These 5. At the same time, we can see in the statement of the governor that he's pointing that it puts particular emphasis on the key objectives and changes to the supervisory priorities planned for the next 12-18 months. Does this mean that you meant here because the published date was within the 2020? Am I right in this?
Yes, that is correct. At the point that statement was made, We had about a year and a half towards the end of the strategic document horizon, which ends at the end of this year. And starting in 2023, we are planning to publish new strategy with new goals and new priorities.
Let me move to my previous question. Do you think it was crucially important to have such a public document in previous years?
It is helpful. It's not something that all central banks have, but we found it helpful to have these documents because of the reasons I described in the beginning. So it's definitely helpful.
In your interview to our TV show Business Morning, you mentioned that all the next documents gonna be not just public as it is so far and already reachable for whoever needs, but it's also going to be in detail discussed with economic experts, analysts, and also representatives of the financial sector itself. But the first document itself was done exclusively by MBG team.
It's true. This is our internal product. The first strategic document was produced internally at the National Bank of Georgia. We didn't have a lot of consultation during the establishment of our priorities and the goals. We want for the next strategy to be more involving of the private sector, of the experts in the field, and have more consultations throughout 2022 during this year before establishing our priorities. Of course, at the end of the day, we are responsible for our decisions and our goals, but we want the input to come from the private sector and from the experts.
And we will also have another supervisory strategy for the next 3 years, less or more. What do you think?
Yes, plan is to have the 3-year strategy, and it will be a rolling strategy. Every 3 years we will publish the new strategy document. So yes.
Personally, for you, key findings, what are the most reasonable for consumers and for the representatives of the Georgian financial market from this strategy?
Yes, so the supervisory function of National Bank of Georgia, it's quite complicated to an average person to understand. It's sometimes difficult to understand what purpose is the National Bank serving, because financial stability is not something that we can touch. It's an abstract definition, and it's difficult to understand. We only know it when we have risks materialize and we have financial crisis. So our mandate coming from the law is to maintain financial stability in the system, and the whole strategic document is built on this core mandate. Though we also think of development, we think of advancing the financial sector, advancing the technologies, and I think for a regular person, this is the fifth priority to promote fintech. It's something that can be really seen, really touched. There are several examples like open banking, the digital bank. These are some things that regular people, the consumers of the financial product, can see.
Okay, and within the performance indicators, the work of the MBG, how it's stated here, can be measured through 3 following indicators. It's ratio of losses of depositors and creditor within the financial sector, ratio of number and assets of bankrupt institution to the total number and assets of all the supervised institutions respectively. Apart from the above, the third one, Papuna, is above mentioned quantitative criteria. The implementation of the mandate of the MBG can also be measured by qualitative factors such as assessments of the reforms related to the financial sector by the international organizations and the international rating agencies. My question is, do you think that just these 3 indicators are covering all the mandate, as you have mentioned, of the MBG? How effectively can we measure and how effectively MBG, the work of the MBG can be measured?
You touched the most difficult portion of our strategic document. This is where we spend most time to discuss. We wish we would be able to define the progress in our work more in numbers. But unlike some of the private sector companies, we cannot define our work based on profitability, growth, and other measurable factors. That is one of the reasons we have added more qualitative assessment. This is the third type, the third person assessment of IFIs, rating agencies, who can objectively assess the work of the National Bank of Georgia. But to speak in the numbers, we also mentioned this strategy. So our objective is not to have all financial institutions at all times be financially viable. So our risk tolerance is not zero bankruptcy. This is not something that we're targeting. We are to some extent open to taking risk, but the risk should be measured and the risk should not be systemic. So we do not mind if one or a couple of financial institutions face difficulties, but this should not have domino effect on the rest of the financial sector, and resolution of these difficult cases should happen in such a way that depositors, the creditors, do not lose money.
And my final question, you mentioned in your TV interview, and your message was as a vice governor of the National Bank of Georgia, that during this year you will pay more attention and it's going to be more exclusively related to strengthening your relations within the coordination with the government, with some other fiscal agencies, and not paying more attention to some amendments within the regulative body. You meant commercial and corporate sector. Could you be so kind to be more in detail with it?
Yes, absolutely. So current strategy 2022 is exclusively, almost exclusively focused on the financial sector risks, approximation to international standards, and we have a smaller component, smaller proportion that's talking about development, the progress, and so on. I think current strategy has turned to be quite intense for the financial sector. We had a lot of reforms that impacted not only national bank but also financial sector. The market participants had to spend a lot of effort on the new developments, including open banking, transition to IFRS, the new reporting standards. These are some quite labor-intensive works that have been implemented. I think for the next 3 years we can have the sector digest these reforms and be lighter on the reforms that impact directly the financial sector, but we can focus more on the development, the international trends in the banking, the growth, where Georgia can position itself on the map of the financial sector regionally or even globally. And in this work, what we have realized over the past couple of years is that it is important that we coordinate a lot with our partner agencies, the governmental agencies across the country, including the digital lottery you mentioned. This is not something that National Bank can do on its own. We need a lot of coordination to make this happen and to yield all the benefits that can come with it.
And capital market and all the strategy what you are coming up from already. So thank you so much for your time and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Yuri.
IMF has a very interesting series analyzing this. I decided to share with you their latest video that explains the forces that drive inflation. Here is the IMF's take.
Inflation. Everyone's talking about it. But what is it? Maybe you've noticed that prices have gone up since the start of the pandemic. Food, transportation, even clothes, all have become more expensive. And you might be wondering, are these price changes here to stay? Let's talk about inflation. Simply put, inflation is positive when prices go up. Economists like us keep a close eye on inflation. We measure it in how much prices change over a period of time. Inflation is driven by supply and demand. Lower supply and higher demand can both lead to higher inflation. For instance, Pent-up demand and the government stimulus packages contributed to greater demand and rise in the inflation rate after the pandemic. Supply chain disruptions, on the other hand, such as log jams in major ports, combined with the increase in demand for global goods, also pushed up inflation. But isn't increased demand really a good thing? In the short run, indeed, inflation can be desirable because it is associated with higher demand and higher growth. However, over the medium and long term, higher inflation rates can actually discourage investment and stall growth. But when it comes to managing inflation, expectations are key. You may have heard the term anchoring. Inflation expectations are considered anchored if inflation is close to the central bank target and generally match what consumers expect to pay. Anchored expectations give central banks and governments more scope to pursue policies that stimulate demand. Let me give you an example. If expectations are anchored, central banks can reduce interest rates and spur investment demand without significantly impacting inflation. When prices and people's expectations go in different directions, that's de-anchoring. And when that happens, inflation can quickly take off and be very costly to rein back in. That's why central banks must communicate clearly to anchor inflation expectations. And policymakers must walk a fine line between remaining patient in their support for the recovery and being ready to act quickly. That brings us to our first question. Will prices keep changing? Well, we can't be sure. But recent IMF projections show that inflation will continue to rise before returning to pre-pandemic levels by 2022. But there are some factors that could keep inflation elevated for longer. In advanced and emerging markets, these could be surging housing costs and prolonged supply shortages. While in developing and low-income countries, rising food prices and falling currency values could be contributing factors. So while there's no firm answer on the future of inflation, there are indicators all around us. Paying attention to them, combined with smart policy and timely action from policymakers, will keep prices stable.
Let us now explain the forces that drive Georgia's economic growth. The economy overall posted 10.6% of economic growth in 2021. In December, the estimated real domestic product growth rate was 9.6%. We followed up on the figures with Gogita Todradze, Executive Director at the National Statistics Office of Georgia. Thank you for being with us and taking our questions. We will be talking about the economic growth figures that Geostat has published recently. We have two-digit economic growth. What does this figure tell in the current context of the pandemic?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and for having this opportunity. As you are aware, in December 2021, estimated real GDP growth rate amounted to 9.6%, and annual average real GDP growth rate is around 10.6% compared to the same period of previous year. So we have in 2021 two-digit economic growth, and when we are talking about drivers of Georgian economies today, first of all, I think we need to pay particular attention to the tendencies existing in external trade statistics. As you are aware, in 2021, total volume of export amounted around $4.2 billion, which is about 26% higher compared to the previous year, while domestic export exceeded $3 billion, which is 30% higher compared to the previous year. It is worth also to mention that total turnover of VAT taxpayers which was used for calculation of economic growth rates, exceeded 11 billion 500 million Georgian lari, which is 31% higher compared to the previous year.
Mm-hmm. So we could say that trade and VAT turnover were the main drivers of this growth. Can we eliminate the base effect when we are talking about this two-digit economic growth?
Definitely, base effect is also relevant. Because as you are aware, perhaps you may remember that in 2020, real GDP declined by 6.8%. That means in 2020, level of GDP was quite low.
Compared to 2019, we still have growth, right? So what does that mean? Can we say that the economy still maintains some kind of resilience towards this pandemic, and it is on the post-pandemic growth track?
Actually, compared to 2019, we have still economic growth, but this is around 3.1%. In this case, the main drivers, main contributors were manufacturing, financial intermediation, retail and wholesale trade, and information and communication sectors.
Since we mentioned the sectors, which sector is the weakest ring, so to say, in the economy right now?
Construction sector could be considered as a weak ring of Georgia's economic today, I mean in December 2021.
What could be the reason for that? Can we identify the reasons behind that? Because this was the sector that was quite well supported by the government, by the state budget, through the subsidies, so that we didn't have this decline. But now we see that still construction sector proves to be the weak ring.
So in this case, I can say that we have relatively low activities in 2021 compared to the 2020.
Can we say the reason behind that?
This is related civil construction activities mainly.
Which sectors could be like more open for investment, like showing the potential for growth? Is it seen through these figures when you're looking at the economic growth?
So in manufacturing, namely metallurgical industry, especially steel, iron, and ferroalloys production. At the same time, production of mineral fertilizers, beverages, and some chemical products are noteworthy as well. Those products greatly contributed to the economic growth in 2021. In terms of transportation sector, I would like to highlight so both land and air transportation activities, but mainly freight transportation. Also, as you are aware, this sector is highly correlated with external trade statistics, you know. So in terms of wholesale and retail trade, trade turnover with motor car, I mean import and re-export of motor cars in different countries from Georgia. Also trade with petroleum products, pharmaceutical products is noteworthy. And also in terms of energy sector, growth was related mainly in production of electricity by hydropower plants. As you are aware, in December 2021, electricity generation increased by 55%. And by the way, consumption of electricity was increased as well by 27%.
What does this two-digit economic growth, considering everything that we have talked about, tell investors at this point? What is your take on that?
Actually, this is not typical question to Geostat. I think Ministry of I think Ministry of Economy or Ministry of Finance would provide more adequate and comprehensive answers. However, in my personal point of view, I think current economic growth figures and existing key macroeconomic indicators really gives more reason for interest and optimism in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Would you say that today there is more certainty for businesses than during the past 2 years when the pandemic broke out? This was one question we asked the head of the Enterprise Georgia, Mikhail Khidureli.
Yeah, I think there is. Economic growth is also something very comforting for the investors, and also these new programs. You know that we have other programs for foreign direct investments. There are other incentives that are being designed right now, and we hope that we're gonna have a communication with you for that as well. So we just came back from Czech Republic, for example. We met with IT and BPO companies, and one of the companies said that they almost decided already to enter Georgian market. So we see that there are a lot of movements and things are getting back to normal.
There have been a number of news and changes to the program that we have wrapped up with Mikhail Khidureli. He told us that from now on, investment funds can also participate in the financing scheme of the agency.
The news is that we have allowed investment funds to also join the program. And just mainly because investment funds are sometimes they are formed with foreign currency. That is why it is important to mention for them as well that the funding provided by Enterprise Georgia is in Georgian lari. Investment funds can also join, and this will be an alternative to the banks. And as you know, the priority of the government is always to provide as diverse access to finance programs as possible, and now we can see that investment fund will also join. So from 27th of December 2021, this program already allows to have different funds in our program as well, and we hope that very soon we're going to have the first fund who will be registered in the program.
The two main programs of the Enterprise Georgia have been merged. What does this change for the entrepreneurs? Mikhail Khidureli will tell us more.
We merged our two main programs. One is the industrial program where we provide co-financing of the interest rate. This is one. And another one is the credit guarantee scheme where we provide the government collateral for the loans. We have combined these two, and now entrepreneurs can get loan subsidy and loan guarantee at the same time. This is the news. And also the companies coming from the sectors which are export-oriented sectors, for those companies, in addition to above mentioned, they will get 15% cashback, which means that co-financing, credit guarantee and cashback, these three things together really provides a really good avenue for new entrepreneurs and also the existing enterprises to join the program.
15 new projects are already in the pipeline looking for the support from Enterprise Georgia. Mikhail Khidureli projects that there won't be a problem on the demand side since the supply is there.
We already have 50 new projects funded by these new programs. Out of that, 4 of them are the programs that are export-oriented. So this means that private sector step by step is getting acquainted with this new program. So we hope that as every year, I don't think we're going to have a problem of the demand. Supply is there, and we are hoping that demand will also be there.
The main instrument of resilience and more. This is how Mikhail Khidureli has been seeing the role of Enterprise Georgia during the pandemic to leverage the business risks.
I think it was good, not only good for resilience, but I think it was one of the main instruments for the private sector and also for the banks to use it to leverage the risks that we had during the pandemic period. I think now we are in a process of post-pandemic period, and we see that more and more companies are now using the program to develop the company and not to, let's say, put out the fire. So we hope that this is the, let's say, the last serious wave of coronavirus, and we're not going to be dealing with the serious crisis anymore. And now we are all with the government of Georgia and the Ministry of Economy, as you know from the statements of the Prime Minister and from the Minister. Now we switch to the main agenda of economic development, and in the economic development, Enterprise Georgia is definitely one of the front runners.
It is more than logical to start the program with a large-scale business and end it with Made in Georgia. Before we say goodbye for the next week, let me introduce you to the business, which kicked off with a $100 investment in 2008. This company is Kalakuri, which after 14 years is now represented with 3 enterprises and hazelnut fields in Kakheti. Salome Jibashvili will tell us more.
I am Mariam Pindishvili, the production manager of the company Kalakuri. We started functioning in 2008. Our idea was to evaluate the Georgian special variety of nuts, which we characterized by low calories and fat. Nuts were packaged and put in stores. The initial investment was about $100. We started production on an area of 100 square meters. We currently produce 100 types of products such as nuts, dried fruits, mixes of hazelnuts and dried fruits, as well as jams. We opened dried fruits production in 2021 in Tserovani. We receive fruit from the population in all seasons and process these products in accordance with the highest standards to retain the useful properties of the fruit. This is what sets our equipment apart. We produced prunes, persimmons, tangerines, kiwis, and dried bananas. Since October, we have produced about 100 tons of dried fruits of all kinds. We get hazelnut hearts from the western part of Georgia from the locals. We also have our own hazelnut plantations and processing plant in Kakheti, where we process the heart of the hazelnut from the shell. We produce about 100 tons of nuts per month. We employ about 80 people. Kalakuri has a hazelnut processing plant in Tbilisi and Kakheti and a dried fruit processing plant in Tserovani. In the future, we want to unite these enterprises. We want to have one production site. In the future, products from these enterprises will be exported both to Georgia and abroad. Kalakuri products were exported before the pandemic. We are currently in the process of negotiations with Ukraine, Germany, and several other European countries. We plan to export to these markets in the summer.
That's all for today. We will meet next Sunday, but before that, follow us on bm.g and forbes.g. Take care.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.